How impossible odds created inventions that you use daily. So this Black History Month, we're exploring the powerful themes of access, legacy, and innovation. And we all know the classic story of invention. It's full of famous names, shiny modern labs, but what if a big part of that story is missing? What if the tools you use every day, the ones that keep you safe and connected, have a secret history that started right here in Canada? I've been doing a lot of research, and history, if you know me, is one of the things that get me excited. So this isn't a story about getting rich and famous. It's a story about a legacy of overcoming impossible challenges to gain access to a better life. It's also about how Black innovators in Canada, facing incredible pressure and unfairness, created amazing things because they had to. And these innovators are more than just objects. They're proof of an innovative spirit that you can't crush. So now let's look at the foundation of constraints and to understand their genius. You first need to understand the challenges that they faced. For centuries, the odds were stacked against the Black innovators in Canada, and Canada's history includes over 200 years where slavery was legal, with laws that treated enslaved people as property, even after slavery ended in 1834. The struggles were far from over. Some things that stood out were they were kept separate in schools, in housing, and at work. And Black loyalists and the thousands of refugees who escaped slavery through the Underground Railroad came to a land that promised freedom but often delivered unfair treatment. One prime minister's government even signed an order to ban Black immigration, calling them unsuitable to the climate and requirements of Canada. But even with all this opposition, amazing new ideas came to life. People weren't inventing to become famous. They were inventing to survive. So now let's talk about the real McCoy, and it's a story of Elijah McCoy. So we're gonna start with a phrase you've probably used, the real McCoy, which means the real deal. That saying is connected to a Canadian-born inventor whose brilliant idea changed industries forever. Elijah McCoy was born in Colchester, Ontario, and Canadians forgive me for this, I'm Canadian too, but in 1844, his parents had escaped slavery in Kentucky by following the Underground Railroad in Canada from a young age. McCoy was great with machines. His parents saved up and sent him to Scotland to study mechanical engineering, but when he came back to North America, no one would hire him as an engineer because of discrimination. And the only job he could get was as a fireman and oiler for the Michigan Central Railroad. So you can imagine that that was a frustrating job that didn't use his skills, but it led him to spot a problem no one else was solving. So back then, trains had to stop all the time just to be oiled by hand, which wasted a lot of time and a lot of money. So in his own small workshop, McCoy invented a solution, and in 1872, he patented his oil drip cup. It was a device that automatically oiled the engine while the train was moving, saving a huge amount of time and money. His invention worked so well that other people started copying it, and soon engineers had to ask for the authentic device for the real McCoy. So, every time a train or a big piece of machinery runs smoothly without stopping, you're seeing the results of Elijah McCoy's genius. An idea born because he was unfairly denied the job he deserved. Sound familiar? Okay. It's also amazing to think that one person's hard work literally made the wheels of industry run faster, but many of these stories have been forgotten. And if you think that these histories should be told, please subscribe and hit the notification. It helps us make sure that these important stories get attention, especially the attention that they deserve. So now let's look at the other one now. We're looking at a community engineer, and it's the story of Josiah Henson. So new ideas are not always about things that you can hold in your hand. Sometimes the biggest inventions are new ways for people to live. And this is the story of Josiah Henson. He was born into slavery in Maryland, but escaped to Canada in 1830 with his wife and children. But just getting to freedom was not enough for him. It was just the start of his life's mission. Strong leader and preacher. So Henson became a conductor on the Underground Railroad. So personally guiding almost 200 people to safety in Canada. He settled near Dresden, Ontario, and along with other abolitionists who wanted to help refugees from slavery build new lives. And in 1841, they bought 200 acres of land and created the Dawn Settlement. This was not just a village, it was a community built with a purpose. And at its heart was the British American Institute, one of Canada's first schools for job training, created to give Black newcomers the skills that they needed to succeed. So this community had its own farms and mills, creating its own economy, and Josiah Henson was like an engineer for a whole community, building a system of hope and independence. And his story shows that the most powerful inventions aren't always machines, but ways for people to lift each other up against a world that try to keep them down. So always remember this. So now let's look at the blueprint of dignity, which is Viola Desmond. These are people we haven't heard of. We've heard of Harriet Tubman. We've heard of, really famous people, but these are people that you haven't heard of. So Viola Desmond. So what can you build with courage and a good idea? For Viola Desmond, the answer was a business empire and a legacy of fighting for what's right. So in the 1930s, Desmond was a driven business owner in Halifax, Nova Scotia. She noticed that Black women in her community didn't have access to professional hair and skincare products. So once again, a problem sparked a revolution. So beauty schools in Halifax refused to teach her because she was Black. And so Desmond traveled to cities like Montreal and New York to get her training. And she returned to Halifax, not just with skills, but with a mission. She opened her own salon. So it's called V's Studio and Beauty Culture. And then went even further by starting the Desmond School of Beauty Culture. This school trained Black women from all over Eastern Canada, giving them a chance to build their own careers. And when they had been denied that opportunity, she even created her own line of beauty products. The women who graduated from her school then sold her products, building a powerful business from the ground up. But her brilliance wasn't just in business. It's best seen in her famous act of courage in 1946. She refused to leave the white-only section of a movie theater in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. And this was not random. It wasn't a random protest. It was a successful, proud business owner taking a stand against a system that tried to make her feel small. So Viola Desmond's story shows how you can turn your own struggles into a way to lift up an entire community, proving that business can be a powerful tool for change. So now let's look at some of the hidden figures of modern Canada. And this is going to focus on the history of invention, which didn't end in the early 20th century. It continues to shape our world today in ways that we might not even see. So take the brilliant Elijah McCoy, who held over 57 patents for his many inventions. That is impressive. Then there's Dr. Anderson Ruffin Abbott, also born in Ontario. He became the first Canadian-born Black doctor in 1861. He served as a surgeon in the American Civil War and was one of the doctors who cared for a dying president, Abraham Lincoln. And that legacy is still being written. Dr. Julia Daniel, a professor and cancer biologist at McMaster University, discovered a new gene and named it Kaizo after a love for Caribbean calypso music. And her important research is now focused on an aggressive type of breast cancer that more frequently affects women of African descent. So we can see that from inventions that power the age of machines to today's life-saving medical research, the work of Black Canadian innovators is all around. It's all around us, and it's often hidden in plain sight. You wouldn't even know about it. But these are inventions that made the train run smoother. And the real story of invention is not a straight line. It's messy and complicated, and it's full of genius, hard work, and the struggle against huge challenges. So the breakthrough from people like Elijah McCoy, Josiah Henson, Viola Desmond, and so many others were not created in fancy labs. They were created out of a need. Each one was a way of fighting back against a system that tried to keep them down. And so their stories are a powerful reminder that true talents can be held back, and that some of the world's greatest ideas come from those who started with the least but dreamed the biggest. Sounds familiar, right? I think I've read a book about dreaming big growing up. So sharing this video helps give these innovators the credit they've long deserved. A question to you: are there other hidden figures from history you think we should talk about? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching.